It's the Villains Talk Show. Woo woot! Hello.
Is the day.
Hello, everybody. And it's the Villains Talk Show and podcast.
The
I,
day of talking.
as always, am one of your hosts, C4. Hopefully to be joined with the elusive gentleman, but for now, just accompanied with my good friend and partner in crime, Insaniac.
Oh.
The Viking and Greasy Boy unfortunately have to work early tomorrow, so they will not be joining us this stream. But that's fine. We'll have a bit of a shorter one today. Like I said, hopefully the elusive gentleman will join us. But before we get to all that, as always, I'd like to thank our patrons, For the Wheel and Rujhala. I also like to thank anyone out there listening to the show. If you want to help us, just, spread the word of the Villains Talk Show. You don't even have to like or any of that stuff. You could just spread our name. Just tell people about us. Don't even have to do any of the other stuff. Just, talk about this cool show that makes you laugh sometimes and talks about stupid shit. Which then everyone will be like, oh, so everyone on the internet. How unique.
Twist.
But
Get the
today,
link tree and all that fun stuff.
there is a link tree somewhere. We got
Somebody worked hard on
just
that.
like every girl on Twitter who has an OnlyFans, we also have a link tree.
Yep. With more links.
So I am here with Insaniac, and because it's us two, I haven't told him what the topic is, and he also has a topic that he hasn't told me. So it'll be fresh takes on both our takes. But it's too bad because earlier in the week, why don't we start there? So Insaniac has taken himself off all social media. I know, scary.
Not all social media, just two. Literally two. Sure.
Pretty much all the social. What?
That's
Do you
literally not
have
all.
Instagram?
I had never had an Instagram.
Do you have a Twitter?
That was one of the ones I deleted myself off. But I'm
Okay.
trying to readjust for my actual thing. I'm trying to just set it apart for a different thing.
All right. Do you have a TikTok?
No, God, why?
And then you deleted your Facebook.
Yeah, just my personal Facebook.
So
I
he's
was
completely deleted himself off all social media.
My goodness, the one social media network. My goodness, I'm sorry. I'm at a. It's too good for you. YouTube still knows me. Twitch still knows me. Also, for those who want to check me out on Ranked One, which is a gaming social media setup, you can check me out on there.
Like you're ranked one
Descriptions.
in the gaming social media?
No, it's a website called rank1.global.
Oh,
It's a
okay.
gaming profile social media where you can share it's literally video game stuff. That's all it is.
Oh, I almost forgot to say we're sponsored by thelikeness.com. Justlikeness.com. Justlikeness.com, our sponsor. Go check them out for free.
I have not deleted all my social media. I'm trying to readjust to just have it so it's just my YouTube stuff as my social media,
Okay.
not like me personally.
But you're still
So,
technically off
and
all social media.
I wasn't really on all social media to begin with.
But what little you were on, you're now off.
Sure, I guess.
I
On
mean,
some.
you're only
I feel
on
like you're.
YouTube.
I feel like you're. I think you're like you're
Well,
making a mountain out of a molehill.
social media is like Twitter, is literally Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook.
There's other forums I talk on and stuff too. I was actually like looking up other stuff.
Yeah, but I mean like the main ones, the one that everyone's on. Even the
My
kids.
goodness.
I can see you on TikTok, you know.
No, God, why would I ever?
There's a lot of truckers on TikTok. You would not believe. These truckers have
That
like thousands and thousands of people watching their videos and they're spewing their vitriol on TikTok. And I'm like, good to
I
know.
don't doubt. I'm not. I don't like. I'm not a preacher, man. I'm not looking to sit there and do my thing. I just try to put out what I feel is my correct and honest. That's it.
On to
All right.
today's
So,
topic. Actually,
but
topic.
I'm trying to be a video game nerd, and with your quizzical nature, sir.
Everyone out there who's watching and listening to the show, except Insaniac, knows what the topic is. At least my topic, and that is Marstrailia.
As I say, I did get a tease of it when he went live. It says it beside your name. It says streaming.
Marstrailia.
I
Now,
got a tease at the title name.
now I'll read you this little blurb. So me and the likeness, we had a brainstorm.
Yeah.
And here was the brainstorm. That Elon Musk is trying to do what the British did in the 1700s. At the same time, he's also trying to steal the idea that Douglas Adams had in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So, in the book Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, there's a planet called Gallifreychem that used poets to make up fake stories about the end of the world. It convinced the idiots, and so the planet built 3 arcs for the entire population. It was first come, first serve. So, on the first arc, once the first arc left, the others never did, shooting all the idiots into perpetual orbit of the planet, while the planet pretends to be inhabitable. Now, that's what happens in the Douglas Adams stories. So, me and the likeness think that
Yeah, isn't there like some more story?
what the Mars arc is, because it is also first come, first serve, is it's a colonization project. And there's no return. So the idea is that actually what Elon Musk is doing is he's creating these arcs to send as many idiots as he can to Australia. And so Australia will essentially build up as a colony, and it will be Marstrailia. It'll be like the modern Australia of our time.
That's an interesting theory. I feel like there's a lot of holes, but fair.
But please poke them. I will fill them.
I mean, well, I feel like so from the things that I've at least seen about stuff that Elon's talked about, a lot of things that he's talked towards trying to colonize Mars. He talks about not just colonizing Mars, but also stabilizing it, right? He's not, from what I understand, he doesn't intend to just. That's a theory, it's an interesting theory. But from what I understand, he doesn't just intend to try to just one step put a ship there with a group of scientists. Like he fully intends to, and hopefully restore that planet, right, and make it a habitable neighboring planet to us.
Now I hear you, and good point. But I counter with anyone who's on social media like Twitter will know that Elon Musk has a propensity for posting stupid things and having an entire army of idiots that follow him on Twitter.
Yeah, and that's also why I left social media because it's a lot of it is stupid.
But he literally doesn't garnish. He gardens. He essentially cultivates this stupidity and this whole cult around him. So I argue that yes, maybe he will send some scientists, but I guarantee the majority of those arcs will be packed with Elon Musk thumping idiots that will literally be shot out into space.
I feel like if anything, they'll be the test subjects for anything physically stress testing.
If anything goes wrong.
Yeah, and that can spread to a wide variety of things. So I don't think you're wrong.
Could you imagine
I
a
think that's
shuttle
going to
of
be a lot of
10,000 people lifts off and just barely makes it past the moon and then goes boom? Like, how much that would stifle the human space project?
I mean, there would be a lot of questions though, like because I don't think their first thought would be like an assault. There would be either a sabotage or something went wrong, right? That would be probably the most forward thought, I would think, unless there was direct evidence otherwise. Like from what I know, the government tries to hide.
I mean, shooting rockets
UAV
out of the Earth's orbit is not an easy thing. It's the reason why rocket science is considered hard.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
let's
Well,
give
because
let's
gravity's different in space. So
let's give
there, it's not
credence.
existent. Absolutely, very very tough. You know, that's where like I like quantum physics. It's a lot. It's a very deep dive into the understanding of that kind of astrophysics on a somewhat explainable level. Because a lot of modern science just goes, I don't know.
Could you imagine Elon Musk fills an entire arc full of flat earthers, and like the moment when they finally leave the Earth and see it's round, like what will happen to their entire life
See,
perspective?
I feel like they would never even I feel like even if they got there, they would not be satisfied because it's still like when you're looking at it, you're seeing a 2D perspective. You're not gonna see the full like effect of the
Well, they
3D
wouldn't
of
see the.
planet.
They would expect to see a flat plane where they could see the entire planet,
And
right?
they technically they kind of would. That's what I mean, right? Because but if you're looking at this and it, a lot of people won't have that. Like stupid people don't have that depth of perception in space all the
Well,
time,
they'd
right?
see the
Like if you
planet
really look at an
rotating.
object,
Like, come on, you've seen
yeah,
videos from the
oh,
space
maybe.
station. Once they get far enough away, they'd see a rotating circular ball. They would not
Yeah,
see
but
a flat giant disc that's just sitting in the
there would
middle.
be a number of people that would be intelligent enough, but there are also a lot of people who'd be like, "See, it's flat. We can see it from here." Like there's, like, but
Sending
I don't.
Earth photos back to
There's
Earth,
always gonna be a dumbass who denies it.
proof that's flat.
Yeah, like I swear I saw like from even from in space, man. It was like the what it was this flat space, and all the landmass kept moving. It would disappear after it would go off the edge. You wouldn't see it. It's like it was rotating underneath it or something. They may make up some other stupid theory that would just explain away the nonsense, right?
That it's sitting on like a plateau in the background and we can't actually
Yeah, or
tell.
like
We
it's
just
the world is a treadmill. The new theory is the world is a treadmill. That's what it will be.
the world is a treadmill.
We just can't feel it because gravity.
Every time God's gracious foot lands upon us, the earth has another miracle. Do you feel the footfall of God?
See?
So what would happen?
Uh,
So what would happen to those religions once they reach Mars? So you know there's going to be missionaries that go to
oh, of course.
Marstrailia.
I mean, religion wouldn't stop because space exploration still happens.
Do you think the religion's going to evolve that Jesus like they found a book? Oh my God, Mars Mormons. Oh my
Eventually, that
God,
might happen where
Mars
they'll
Mormons.
find,
Like okay,
and it could.
put
It's hard
yourself
to prove that
put
authenticity.
yourself a
To
thousand
like,
years from now. Okay, try to put yourself 1,000 years from now. Mars is colonized. Can you fathom, like I can, that there's going to be some guy who's going to be like, you know what? I found a book of Jesus on Mars. Here's my proof.
oh yeah,
Mars
yeah.
Mormons.
See, well, that's what I mean. That's what I was thinking at that point. But there will be probably things like that. And what's to say that might actually like happen? Maybe like somebody's like, oh, we found some Christian like or some old like
We
relic
found
from
the
times
bones
past.
of an
It, re-
angel.
it rewrites history, and suddenly you have to follow it this way, right? That's obviously at some point gonna happen.
We found the bones of an angel. Mars was the true testing ground of God. Perhaps the Garden of
Yeah.
Eden.
Yeah, exactly. See, and then every worldview will switch and change over
See,
like
but we're just
who
stealing.
thinks the
We're just
center.
stealing Doom's plot line and just reversing it. I mean, Doom had the idea that Mars was actually hell back in the '90s.
Well, I mean, that's fair, and it just
Right?
depends though, right? Because like nowadays with the telescope and stuff that they've seen, like there's a lot more other places that
Oh,
fuck who knows where
the
we end up, right?
telescope.
Well, I don't remember what it was called now because I don't pay
The
attention to.
James. Oh, it's called the James something telescope.
Yeah, it recently put up a lot of new pictures about
Oh, what's it called?
galaxies pretty far away and like new planets and stuff
My
like that.
mind
So
immediately wants to say James Woods, but I know that's not
it was,
right.
I think it was Hubble or something like that,
No,
or
Hubble's no longer the thing. Now it's this.
well, no,
No,
I know the Hubble one was a different one, but I thought
the
that
new
was part of
hotness, as it were, is this new
it was
telescope, which I
Hubble.
will find out. We're just gonna call it the new hotness for now.
The new
Um,
hotness.
yeah, the new hotness.
Yeah. But yeah, there's a lot of other planets that that one has seen that could be like life. It just depends on how we definitely gotta figure out our shit first and figure out the second one after, in a sense.
The James
Because
Webb's
like
James Webb.
Jed's Web, that's what it was, yeah. Um, I think we could totally like recolonize Mars or even have a sister planet in Mars if we actually could get our shit together.
No, if we colonize Mars, it's gonna be like I like I. Marstrailia isn't just a name for like being a joke. Like I literally guarantee, 1,000 years from now, if we truly colonize Mars, if you are a Martian and you were born on Mars, you are a second-class citizen in terms of the global citizenry. I guarantee because I
What was
know
that
how
plot to
humans
that
are.
movie? I can't remember. They did that. They did
I
that in the movie
know
too.
how humans are.
Total Recall. Total Recall.
Yeah, it will be
Yeah.
Total Recall. Total Recall will be looked back as like historically accurate, except
Yeah.
maybe not so.
I feel like a lot of like post-apocalyptic movies are kind of like that. They're just like random like offshoots that like what could possibly happen and maybe we'll be right.
Oh my god. Do you know how erect a director must be thinking about the fact that in some post-apocalyptic future there's some asshole watching their movie and thinking, "Oh my god, they predicted everything. This guy
Yeah.
was this guy must have been touched by God."
Yeah.
I mean, that director who did the Book of Eli, I would say pretty much already did that.
I mean, kind of. It was a
But
good
no,
movie, but it
I
wasn't really.
think the only people who will get to go to Australia, or sorry, I keep wanting to say Marstrailia. the
It
people
sounds like
who
you want to say Australia.
the people who will only get sent to Marstrailia will be workers. So like blue collar workers, basically if it's construction or just any of
Oh,
that
it
kind
would
of work.
probably, yeah, it would probably
And
become a production planet. I don't think it has a lot of overall resources
but
to
that's
like stick
tons of
around.
metal. What are you talking about? That's why it's
That's what I
red.
that's what I said. Production. That's
So
what I
much
mean. Like
iron. So
it would
you'd
be a
have a bunch
production
of
company, right? And
factory,
metal and
yeah, a
workers.
bunch of
Yeah,
blue,
factory,
a
industrial.
bunch of construction workers, a bunch of factory workers, and then scientists. So you're gonna have a huge degree. You're gonna have a huge difference already in the population in terms of education level. And
Yeah,
then on
yeah.
top
Well,
of
it'll
that,
be a different planet.
on
Totally
top of
different
that,
planet. I agree.
majority of those resources will be mined and sent to Earth. And especially if you're a company from Earth sending workers to go build these factories on Mars, you you're not looking to pay tariffs as if they're countries. Like I
Yeah. Well,
guarantee
the first company doing that probably will find a way to not have to
They've
pay
already
anything.
talked about how Mars is going to basically be the same as a moon. Will be a non colonization, like you can't claim it. You can have a colony there, but
Yeah.
you can't claim that this is America. So
Yeah.
that means that you all of a sudden you have the propensity for a free market, like a true free market in space. Which I like when you're looking at a planet that doesn't have natural oxygen, natural green and natural oceans. Like even if you were able to terraform it to the point where there is some ocean, I doubt
Well,
that
it'd have to
Mars
be stable, right? So it would have to have some kind of water system that actually works.
Mars does have ice caps, but
No, I know that, but I would have to have a stable like life support system, right?
I
Not
just
just
don't
one
think
that.
it would ever. I just don't think Earth, because people are so greedy, would ever let Mars have either its own government unless it fights for it, or like
Well, yeah, I would say that's the way it would happen. Is if it anything, it would be there would be a planet takeover once the planet was established. That would be, if
yeah,
anything, when it happened. Otherwise, like
Marstralia.
yeah, it would just be its own kind of thing. Like because there would be no way once you had fully established a point, unless you had made it had a genuine like democratic cooperation, there would be really no way to fundamentally guarantee any partnership after it's been fully stable, right?
Exactly. So it would just be left to its own. I'd almost imagine like 500 years from now, it would be like Borderlands. Once the terraforming was actually
Yeah,
completed, at
they actually
first
could bring some plant life.
it would act like if you're thinking like Total Recall, just that
Well, that's where it's
moment when
gonna
they actually
start,
put
but
the
I'm
air,
hoping it'll eventually
I
get
would
like a lot
imagine it would
further.
go Borderlands style and go Wild West. And
Yeah,
then
well, that's where I hope that's where I figure it would start, but I would hope it would eventually become like kind of
it's
the desert Arabia. Eventually, you'd see pockets of oases popping up. Eventually, here and there,
it's
slowly you'd
why
see green regrowing, but
no, I agree.
eventually.
Like I think eventually green would come back, but then again, it would be have to be native vegetation to Mars, which who knows what that would
Yeah, of
look like.
course.
Maybe it's purple.
I mean, true. From what I, yeah, that's fair. There's a lot of
Um,
things what I could look at. From what I think I remember like people talking about studies or things about some vegetation they had found on Mars, but it was like frozen or like
it
fossilized.
would probably be frozen or fossilized because they do have ice caps. I was gonna
Yeah.
say, though, I think one of the reasons why, kind of going on a little bit of a tangent, why Cowboy Bebop, if anyone out there has never seen it, you probably should, is so beloved is because it's such a brutal reality view of what the universe will look like 1,000 or like 1,500 years from now. No,
I always figured it
it's
was
even
gonna be like Star
further.
Wars, to be
It's
honest.
even further. I don't. I think Cowboy Bebop is right. Like you eventually have companies that grow so massive and so lucrative that they essentially own entire planets.
Yeah,
And
like
you
the
have
Outer Worlds kind of story. I
yeah,
don't know if you've ever
exactly.
played that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I thought things could go that way. I feel like it'd be really remiss in a certain sense because it would be very similar.
because there'd be
You get a
no
lot of people that would be
the
tied off by policy and all these things. They wouldn't do anything.
the way that Cowboy Bebop explains it. I'm not sure how Outer Worlds does it. Is that there's doesn't matter how much regulation you put in, there's no way to actually stop the growth of a company because once you get a planet that has really no life and not, like you could exploit it as much as you want.
Yeah, well,
And
because there's
like
nothing sentient in
there's
the way of
literally no
like fundamental.
like what are you
But
scared of?
that depends. That depends on if you have to take it to a different like worldview in a sense, right? Because you could technically, in a sense, claim that the planet itself is a living being, but you'd have to take a lot of measurements to genuinely prove that.
Yeah, I was gonna
And
say good luck.
if that planet is even functionally producing life to be categorized as a living planet to begin with, right? So that would really depend. Because if it's not, then you just keep it that way and use it as whatever you want, right?
And although it's a really nice way because it is a historically what is it? It's a like isn't that an ancient Chinese belief that the planet is one being? Anyway, it's really nice way to look at it, but
I'd say I might be. I'm kind of a Taoist, and it's
under
one in that sense.
under the steaming awesomeness of progress, you can't you can't be rooted in the trivial aspects of whether something's alive or not.
Well, that depends on that's a corporate outlook on it, right? If that's the way that it
But
progresses, then that's obviously going to be the way that
that's
it looks,
just the
right?
way that majority of people with money look at it, and people with money
That's exactly
have.
the same thing as a corporate outlook.
But it's this it's one and the
It's
same, right?
because there is no there is no modern difference nowadays other than a family
You can't even
owned
like
point or a corporate franchise,
even if it's not a
right?
corporate outlook and it's not the corporation's direction. If they need money and you have someone who is an investor who has tons of money and that's their outlook, the corporation will adopt their outlook. Like it's all about the money. It's always about the money.
Well, I understand that. What I mean is that it's there's the corporate outlook still is going to be the same no matter what, right? Like it's still overlying about profits, and sure it might look like maybe somebody wants it in blue this time, and maybe somebody wants it in orange, whatever color they want to paint it, and it doesn't
Delicious
really
profits.
change. It doesn't, yeah, it doesn't matter because that's all it's about, right? It's about the bottom line in that sense, and that's how to further continue that train of production, and that's you know it's that's in the way of if you're going to go with Outer Worlds, it's kind of a similar thing, right? It's you have, and I think that's something that Borderlands goes with too, right? You have each company end up kind of like owns a different planet. You have Dahl, it's a weapons company, and it owns like one. You see that in Borderlands 3 a lot if you end up playing that one. You go planet hopping pretty much, and you get to see some of these different ones that are owned pretty much by different companies. Like I think Atlas almost owned um I can't remember the name of what the original first Borderlands planet was, but then Hyperion was trying to fight them for ownership.
Pandora.
Pandora, yes, that's the planet. Thank you. But yeah, and eventually Hyperion, I think, ends up getting crashed, and I think Atlas was out before Hyperion owns
Funny,
it.
you're
So
mentioning an Australian-made game,
yeah.
Marstrailia.
Yeah, well, it just depends if that there's a lot of the future is never really set in stone. It just depends on
Or is
where the
it?
people decide where it
If you
goes.
believe in string theory, technically it is.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of potential of where you think that could go, right? Quantum physics and things like this very deep leap.
Anyway, that was what I had for my topic today. What about you, bud?
Very
You had something for
yeah.
me too.
So I mean, just randomly going through my email, for those who are on Twitter, who check out a reporter named Keenan Baxter, or who are familiar with the counter signal. I was just checking out one of the emails I got, which the show talked about one of the newer updates from his article was about the economic forum that's having apparently they're they're working in collaboration to bring drones to bring healthcare and equity and vaccinations and medicine to the people of India to accelerate the transformation of inefficient health supply chains to digital resilient infrastructure that reduces wastage and improves health outcomes. Yeah, and apparently they've had like 300 different trials that have gone on so far. So I don't know.
Wait.
Interesting. They
One
were
one more
apparently
time.
they did an organ transplant
So they're using
as well.
drones
Yeah,
to
transporting medicine,
to
deliver
deliver
vaccines, deliver
medicine,
organs too, dude.
and that's it.
Well, it's just it's trial right now that they're doing in India. They're in the midst of giving medicine from the sky initiative is what it's
Holy
called.
shit! All right, you've heard it here first on the Villains Talk Show. I fucking guarantee it, guys. Anyone who's listening to this, it's never happened before in human history, but I will guarantee will happen. Maybe not in the next 5 years, but give it about 10 years, and it'll start happening in places like India first, and then it'll start to spread. And what's gonna happen,
Mm-hmm.
guys, is you're gonna have highly, highly intelligent kids who are good with computers, who are literally taken from their families and shoved into small rooms with computers. And what they'll be forced to do is they'll be forced to hack these drones and bring the person who has them trapped, the criminals, the gang, whatever, these organs and or medicines, who will then sell them on the black market. And it'll become extremely hard to trace it first because they won't have an exact way of tracing the drones once they've been hacked. So it'll become a huge cyber war where you will start seeing drones and hacked ones will veer off their path towards essentially these drug lords who will accumulate these organs and these drugs and then sell them on the black market because of the demand. I
Quite
guarantee.
possible. It's gonna
No, I
you'll
guarantee
have a
fucking
lot of
it.
fixes that'll eventually they'll have to change. They'll have to change their infrastructure around to like doing a lot more technical like resalvage in a
One of the
sense like China
most
has.
innovative things in life when you study politics, you study one of the topics you study is invention, right? And it's a weird topic because it's the idea of inventing, the idea of progress, and it's a really weird class. But one of the things they tell you is the drivers of invention, the true drivers of invention in society is conflict and crime. And as far back as you can, through almost all of human history, except for one thing, all of human progress has been made out of conflict and crime. And so it is
I
in
would kind of I wouldn't disagree, but I would add that like things have had some progression in this. Yeah, I would say in the past like couple years because our I would say there hasn't been too much conflict in the way of certain things in the
No, we had a
past, I'd say
Cold
10 to
War.
20 years. Definitely before. Like I'm saying past 10 to 20 years. I'm not saying a huge amount of time. Definitely you're mostly right, like 100%.
But
Definitely
look at
conflict occurred.
Obama at ending
But I'd
the
say there
Iraq,
has been a bit more lately.
how he ended the war on terror, drones, and those were developed those were massively funded and developed under the Bush
Yeah.
administration during the entirety of the Iraq War.
But it was
And
it
now
was
we have
something they were already kind of looking into sometime before. Like it definitely
no, you're
hit the
right,
military contracting, like
but
for
there's
sure hit the military for. But
hundreds of things the military are looking into. It's what they have
oh yeah, of
funding
course.
for that they literally have to go through R&D and figure out what they have funding for. But if they find all of a sudden they have funding for drones because people don't want the Americans going in and dying in
No, I
Iraq or the
understand that.
Middle East, all of a sudden they had all this funding for drone technology. And now because there was so much military funding for that drone technology during conflict, drones are now ubiquitous, and drones are now becoming a household item. You can get them cheap. You can get faster. You can get large drones. Drones are now delivering
You
packages,
you
and
you
this is.
could get drones before this. That so I wouldn't say quite that. You are quite right. There's a lot more advancement. It's gotten quite like more
But
advanced
you
these
can get
days in the way it's
that.
done.
But
But
that's
you could always get like the same kind of drones, like larger, like four propeller drones that you could hobbyists would get. But they were definitely like a unique item, right?
exactly. And it became the ubiquity because there was so much funding put into it. So now it was cheaper parts. Now instead of a
Yeah.
drone like 20, 30 years ago when they were out costing you like almost $1,000 to buy, you can buy the same drone now for maybe $100 because the parts are cheaper.
Yeah, or
The
you can get
the
like a cheaper like
the
a
R and
instant
D
one,
is
right? Like
there
you were
now.
before.
That's that's
Yeah.
that's what the idea is. And then crime. Crime also fuels invention because crime will always think of new and better ways to get around stuff. And so you have, I think, like the idea of, oh, what was it? I just had it in my head. Modern distilleries, right? So modern distilleries for alcohol, the old ones used to be these massive things that were very cumbersome and didn't exactly make the best alcohol. But because distilleries had to go underground when during the Prohibition era, you have all these distilleries that basically perfected smaller and more efficient ways of making alcohol. And so now that became the norm. Invention in the
It's
alcohol.
the one thing I would say though in the tough part of it in the specific sense of like food items, it's tough to really nail down that kind of like level of advancement. It's hard to improve on something that was originally done like thousands of years ago by a person who like as a chef I find that one a little tough to kind of pitch to me. Maybe
But
to somebody else.
food is different. Food is
Same
literally.
with alcohol, though. Alcohol is still like something that people like.
But
People had made mead and things so long ago as a way to really just enjoy and relax. So it's really hard to, like, it's just in in the past thousands of years, it
but
hasn't.
that's what I
The,
mean. Like
the advancement isn't
there
really
was
like.
never a need to advance it. But then all of a sudden there was a whole country
There's,
that made it illegal. No, that's
I
that's.
wouldn't say
I'm
there
so
hasn't.
glad you said that because that's
I
exactly what
wouldn't
I'm
say there
getting
wasn't
at.
a need. There was just a way to expedite it. They had definitely advanced it a lot faster
But
and made it a lot easier and found different ways to hide it.
this
Right?
is
It
why
was
you
definitely a
have
different
cold.
way of
This is
doing
why
it.
you have cold beer in the United States and nowhere else in the world. This is why everywhere else it's warm lager because they've done it the same way for hundreds and hundreds of years. But in United States during the Prohibition era, they didn't have time to let the beer get warm. And so when it came out and they would compress it using compressed gas, it made it cold. And so they served the beer cold. And
That's
like that like
in a traditional sense, that's not so much an evidence point though either. That can happen at any point. You know, I don't like I. You're right. In that point, I don't disagree. It's definitely a obvious change, but like traditionally is a hard thing to really point at because anyone could really just kind of break
I'm
that
just
cycle. It happens with families, and you know.
I'm just saying, but look at what's happened now. Like look
But
at 100.
like I said, you're mostly. I don't disagree in the way what
Just
you're saying.
just
It's just
but
certain examples.
it's a small change. But look at 100 years later. Now cold beer is only. I mean, you go to Europe, it's all warm, which is fine. But you go to America and it's all cold beer because of this, because of crime doing this so that they could sell illegal alcohol to Americans. It's now
I would
become a
better.
widespread staple. That's all.
I don't.
That's all the point of progression is progression. The argument
I
is
understand.
progression's pushed by either crime
I
or war.
I would say I would narrow those two down to say that progression is advanced by trends, not so much. But and trends can fall under that umbrella of having conflict or crime. But I feel like there's other things that
But
assist to
trends
as
can be
well.
regressive too. You can have trends that are just
They
like
can, they can, they can. But a lot of but efficiency still lasts the test of time, right? So even if things go regressive, if it's still not useful and it doesn't work over time and people don't like it, people will still fight to have the other thing, right? And or they'll stop buying it overall.
here's another one I'm looking up while I'm talking to you. So the reason why stream cameras and cameras are so much better on your phones and stuff is directly connected to CCTV.
Oh yeah,
Because
absolutely.
so since CCTV for the 90s and 80s was so blurry, it was hardly usable in court. Money was invested by different police forces and state governments across America to different camera companies to develop better recording technologies.
And so,
There
like,
was
I definitely. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, darling. I apologize. I do
I
have a
just
lot.
wanted to point out, like I was thinking what you're saying, and I'm looking up streamer cameras, and I'm like, this is crime. Yeah, the reason I have such a good
That's.
camera is because of crime.
I would definitely. I would say that I would attribute that to one of the few successes of capitalism of directed capitalism. Right. A lot of things can be really achieved with a currency if the focus is directed to a project that you really need done and you have the right kind of persuasion behind it. It'll get done fucking quickly, right? And it'll get done.
The right kind of force. Like if you have a lot of backing,
Well,
yeah.
persuasion, force, whatever, money. There's a lot of different ways that comes from, right? So,
Well, money
but like
talks.
if you, that's what I mean, right? And that's a capitalist kind of thing, and it has its benefits, and there can be a huge surge and a push in research and development really quickly, and we get a lot of advanced technologies because of it. But then there's also times because of that, other places end up becoming lacking in certain things. But it depends on where that force is being met with a need for business and as well as equal amount of profits for the company to want to feel invested in, right?
Well, I mean, some companies do make money at a loss, but I do hear what you're saying.
And well, and that's where there's always an overall because that's where you have people that there's always and that for me in my opinion I think there is a society that could be set up with potentially out currency and based off kind of like time in a sense like I don't know if you've seen that in time movie from like
Of
Justin
course I
Timberlake like
have.
I wouldn't set it up the same stupid way of like
In
tied to
time.
your fucking body but like as a bank account, as it monitors your work, so time you put in is what you can be used for currency. But at the same time, I think people could have like basic needs. So like every basic needs are free, but after that, anything extra or excess, you have to actually work for and do something about.
I
You have
think
to
we've
actually
talked
participate
about
in
that
society.
horrible Justin Timberlake movie a few times on the show.
It is pretty terrible.
It is pretty terrible. It's great concept, pretty terrible.
But like it's I don't know. It just depends on where things go because like you could focus things in that sense and when you have that you have the potential to have people more focused on a passion and I think if in and I see it more in my industry so maybe it's just my bias in that sense where because I work with either soulless cooks or passionate chefs and a soulless cook is useless and does nothing and a passionate chef drives the kitchen and drives our industry and gets us paid if we don't have that nothing happens so it really makes a difference in my industry when you have somebody that actually cares about where the food comes from, where it's invested from, who eats it, if they enjoy it.
Is
The
it
people who are
sad?
participating at every step actually want to be part of it,
All I want is one passionate chef and a bunch of mindless cooks.
And that's a lot of times that's an
Ugh.
equal for success, right? You just need a lot of a person who knows how to direct it, but because then that chef will teach the other people in time how to figure shit out, because that's how you have an intelligent individual. But it's not. It's in my opinion, you need that in every industry.
Every industry.
Who cares about where the money is going? Who has the money? Who does what they do with their money? If it impacts their lives, if this client
Yeah,
is
the boss.
doing
That's
it for
that's the point of the boss,
reg.
man.
But even then, like it's such a low standard these days, where nothing. It's become to the point where like legitimately like you're wasting your time and your money hoping that a company will genuinely put in that drive from their CEO, and it's more put into just put out more of the same thing, right? And change, don't change it if it ain't broke, but that doesn't improve at all. That doesn't make anything better, and eventually it does break over time. And it's maybe not over like right away, but like one step at a time, and people can see that, right? Especially if it comes 5, 6, 7 years at a time, it starts to be noticeable that slow things are breaking down, right? And it requires someone to actually have that passion to be like, yes, I love this job, even if you're not, you know, find a passion, whatever the fuck it is. If you want to be the janitor, there's got to be at least somebody in your industry, or at least a handful of these people that actually drive that. Because if you don't, there's not there's no there's no care put into your shit, and every time you get your shit, it's always going to fall apart. If it's goods in the way of electronics, if it's your clothes, your food, if it's just like your car, if even like you get this shit from a machine is only supposed to last a certain amount of time, right? But somebody who actually takes the time to look over that shit and make sure it's actually done well and it's made properly after it's been made, and notices all the fucking errors and mistakes, because sometimes this shit doesn't check it over. If you don't, it all falls apart, and you get it for like look at American production. It's one thing that my dad used to talk about when we were a while ago. My dad used to got a American microwave when I was like younger, and this thing lasted for probably almost 30 years. And you get a microwave today and it lasts like maybe 10 ish. Like if that, or any other like kind of any technology based like that, things are made to break down because it makes you buy another one, right? It's not exactly made to last longer. But then like you could sell more in warranty and
But
things
they're
like
also
that.
cheaper. That's the whole point, right? Like they aren't made to last longer, but they're cheaper and lighter. That's where you
But
get the trade off.
that
So
that's
now
it's not exactly a worthwhile trade, you know?
instead of it being like an entire paycheck, now you can afford one for like $100, and it doesn't break the bank.
But it's not exactly a worthwhile trade when you're paying some for something that lasts half the time. Like I pay for
It
shoes
becomes
that are
more
like 10,
ubiquitous, though.
like
All
I
of a
pay ten
sudden,
bucks for shoes, but they
but
last like a month or two,
but
right?
that's the whole
And then I have to
argument.
pay another $10 for another shoes.
You've had people arguing for years that they can't afford something, and there's a huge gap in terms of wealth. And so you start making things that are cheaper, more ubiquitous, so that other people with less incomes who are in a lesser bracket can afford these things.
No, and I don't disagree. It's just cheaper shouldn't mean lesser quality in a sense. It should, or
But
lesser care.
sometimes it has to. Sometimes it has to.
I I understand for a bottom line there has to, but at the same time, if you're a boss, and this is what I mean, is if you have the boss that cares, then you put the effort to, so that doesn't, right? You make that negative into a positive because that's your job.
It's just, I mean, I hear you. It's just a lot harder to do that because you're right.
It's definitely harder. You're right.
Your whole point is you want to make money, right? And you also have to pay your employees and you have your own costs. And on top of that, you have to make a product that's going to be relatively cheap, but at the same time still has to at least produce somewhat of a profit every time you sell one. And you could spend time on quality, but that's more money you're putting into your product, which means you have to sell it at a higher price or else you're making less of a profit margin. If your profit margin turns goes from like 9% down to 5, then you have to start laying off people because you're not making enough money to stay afloat.
I understand. What I would say is, if you had my thought process, if you had more of these people with that passionate outlook in key specific places, your efficiency goes up much higher because they're more willing to do things on their off time, more things to pitch in on certain things. Not every time.
Mm.
It's not something that would probably be noticeable over time, but for something that I see in my industry, it is something that's very noticeable. And I think if it, like I said, if you had a few, if certain industries had few more of these people in key places, it would be very impactful. Maybe not everybody, not everyone has to fucking be, super whatever you are at that job. It's just having somebody in these positions, like, because there's a lot of people that are fucking in management positions that aren't fucking well suited to, because people just panic and hire whoever instead of, just getting set up. There isn't a lot of support, in my opinion, to help with that. Like trying to like, I nowadays with the internet, there's a bit more with LinkedIn and stuff like that where you can find job social medias and set up like a career network, and it makes it easier to find some people like this. But like, hopefully it could be better, and one day I'm hoping that's something that could be at where it helps support a lot of that and help finding, putting these people in the right spots and making that difference, because I genuinely think it would have a lot more of an impact. You have, those Chef Boyardee's guys, right? The Chef Boyardee was just a dude who, some Italian,
Yeah,
foreigner who
I
moved to
got it. I
America.
got it.
Well, I'm explaining it for our audience in a sense, but he was an Italian foreigner who moved to America, and he wanted to make Italian food for people who came here to have something authentic, and he ended up that need, that conflict, that trend established a need for canned Italian food, right? And that brought about a new way to preserve and process and sell different types of food, right? In a new form and a new way to market to different kinds of people, right? You got canned food is so, critical nowadays for the American culture.
It's so critical. Canned food is a staple. It's
like
so gross, though.
it makes up
Fuck,
like,
I hate
but
canned
it preserves
varieties.
so much, and it makes up like probably like 90% of most food, right?
Did you see the picture, like the old picture of the Colonel from Kentucky Fried Chicken?
Oh, the old one. I don't think I've seen the old one.
When he
I've
was like a
definitely like.
young man. He was
No,
actually a
I don't
very
think I
dapper
have.
man.
I would imagine, if he was a colonel, he would
Yeah.
probably look
So
the
let's
part a little bit.
let's end on that. It's been a good time. I'd like to thank everyone who watched at home live and all of you who are listening to the
Appreciate you.
podcast. I'm sorry you had nothing better to do, but I'm glad you spent it with us here. I am C4 with Insaniac.
Check
We
out my ranked one and other stuff and Twitch and wonderful things. I'm gonna self plug because I can.
yeah, I
Oh,
mean I mean yeah.
that was all I had. That was all I had.
If you liked it, like, share, and subscribe. We love you all. I hope you guys have a
You're
great
wonderful
night.
people. You are the best people.
Yeah, they are.